bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever it is that you guys are watching this when you're watching this. Welcome to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. My name is Jim Parsons. I'm here with thehockeyreaders.com. It is Tuesday as we record this. It'll be Wednesday as you watch this, which means that there's probably going to be an Oilers game against Vancouver tonight as you see this. Very exciting time. The regular season's kicking off. We got a couple of our regular contributors with us. Brian Swane is here. Brian, how you doing?
Doing good, Jim. How you doing?
Doing really well. I'm excited. We got a game tomorrow, a game that counts. Oilers have been very good in preseason. Preseason is preseason, right? They've been good in preseason before, and we'll see how it goes. Julian Mongillo is with us as well. Julian, how are you?
Oh, I'm ready to go. We had the fantasy draft last night, our first one. So if you guys haven't checked that video out, make sure you check that out. Fantasy hockey draft for the hockey writers. But other than that, hockey's back, so I'm fired up.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I will say I was a little peeved. I didn't really get any Oilers. So I did our fantasy draft, and I don't think I got like one real winner Oiler. I just was like, but that's the way it goes in fantasy drafts when you don't know where you're going to be selecting. All right, so we're going to talk about a couple different topics tonight. One, we can't really avoid talking about line combinations because it's all over the place. Everybody's worried about it. Season hasn't started yet, but we see things in practice. We hear Dave Tippett's comments, and we don't really know what that's going to look like. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about some of the roster moves that happened here this week, and then we'll do some projections for the Oilers, kind of figuring out where some players are going to be, what's going to happen here. So that's what our show is going to be like tonight. So we hope you guys stay tuned for the whole thing and enjoy it. Brian, I'll start with you. You've been keeping a close eye on Twitter and social media, everything else. Tony Brar, a lot of people talking about, Bob Stauffer's talking about the line combinations in practice. Dave Tippett's comments today about who's playing with whom. What can you tell us? What are you thinking? Is it chaos already? Is it interesting based on some of the people who are paired with each other? What are you thinking without one single game happening for the Oilers yet?
Yeah, interesting, chaotic, fascinating, all the above. It's a lot of fun, actually. I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on here. And of course, you watch the reaction of from Oilers Twitter. We all know how that goes. The panic buttons are off as soon as, or the panic buttons are being pressed as soon as we see the lines being shuffled. I find it very interesting. Of course, we're talking about. It's looking like Draisaitl and McDavid are going to be paired on the top line with Puljujarvi to start the Oilers' first game. Zach Hyman, who we've all slotted in on that top line alongside McDavid and Puljujarvi, pretty much from the moment they signed him, is being sent or bumped down to the second line to where he'll play alongside a guy that I think is a very, not the same kind of player, but kind of fills the same kind of role on that line in Nugent Hopkins. And I think for me, I don't think it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. What fascinates me is that this is not really something we saw at all in the preseason, these particular lineup combinations. And now for the first game, they're just deciding, or Tipp is deciding to roll out with it. So I don't know, is there some gamesmanship going on here? Maybe he's just trolling everybody. But it's fun, it's fascinating. And you know what? I never complain when I get to see McDavid and Draisaitl play on the same line. Even if like everyone else on the team is a bunch of junior B scrubs, put those two on the same line and like magic is going to happen.
See what
right?
they can do.
Yeah. With Tippett, you never know. Like, I do get the sense that he has a plan and then he deviates from it like last second a lot, right? He does it in the playoffs where he'll move like a line like Yamamoto, Nugent Hopkins. Who else was on that line with him in the playoffs? And they just split him up. And it was like, what is he doing? Why did he split it? And everybody was all over the Draisaitl on Yamamoto and Nugent Hopkins. It was like the best line in hockey for the last 20 games before the playoffs. And then he took them apart. So I don't love the idea that Draisaitl and McDavid might start the season together because they're going to play together anyway. Every time there's a power play, they're going to be on the ice together. All that is, if it's dying minutes of a game or you're double shifting somebody, like they're going to get their opportunities. So I don't love that might be how it starts, but at the same time, like you said, they could be trolling people. What do you think, Julian? are you like totally anti the idea of Draisaitl and McDavid starting together? Do you think that this is, much ado about nothing? Don't worry about it yet.
So I listened to Tippett's press conference when they were asking about all the line juggling and who's playing where. So I was listening to that, and I just thought that, he was saying that this is allowed to happen because of the depth that they've added in the offseason, which I understand that. But at the same time, in order to make a deep lineup, you got to be deep down the middle, which they did do a good job over the offseason bolstering that. But I think that having Draisaitl as a second centerman, where you're coming at the teams with a 1-2 of Draisaitl, McDavid constantly, that's hard to overcome for any team's defense core. I don't care who it is, right? So, and then you got a reliable guy like Derek Ryan, who's, defensively, he's safe, everything like that. So I think that just takes away from that whole aspect. Like you load up the one line, but and I think they still are deep enough that it won't necessarily hurt them. But I think that they're a stronger team when you're built down the middle with a top 1-2 punch that you can keep rolling out constantly of those two guys and dominating on offensive zone. That's how you chip away at the opposing teams.
Yeah, I don't know why you would start. I get it. If you're halfway mid game and you're down 2-0 or you're down 3-1, and you need then do it. Right?
We've seen the Chicago Blackhawks do that all the time. Patrick Kane, Taves, load them up. A couple shifts. And even the Oilers have done it over and over. It's just, you spend the money on Hyman to go play second line now, and then you're shuffling everybody down further in the lineup. It's like, it's a little bit puzzling, and especially the first game of the season where, you want to kind of see what you have. Like, I would want to see if Hyman can play that side with McDavid first before you go switching everything else. Like, give people time to get acclimated with who they're playing with, because this constant interchanging of people there's no chemistry after.
Yeah, it's a break glass in case of emergency situation where you need those guys at the end. Starting them, not really sure. What do you think this means, Brian, for Zach Hyman? Because that's the guy that everybody figured would be on the top line. And if he's not, I like the idea that Zach Hyman is exactly the utility player that they signed. He can be anywhere in your top 6. He can be in your bottom 6, but I don't think he'll do that. I just don't know if the idea of McDavid and Zach Hyman together, where he's digging up, forechecking, getting all those pucks back to McDavid, and then you take that away, maybe. Like, I don't know. What do you think about what this means for a guy like him?
Yeah, that's like I say, which is a real head scratcher to me about this, is the fact that that line seemed to make perfect sense. I mean, like I say, when they signed him 3 months ago now, that's what we had penciled in. That's what we've seen them roll out in the preseason. It just seemed to make sense. And more so to me too, I don't get necessarily, like you say, Hyman he's the perfect utility player. You can plug him in anywhere. I think he's going to play an effective role regardless of who he's with. He can adopt to different scenarios, different situations, but I don't necessarily, him and Nugent Hopkins together, like I say, they really seem to be, they're very similar to me in the roles they play on that line. And I think I did that. That's what really puzzles me about this. Like, we've seen the Draisaitl and McDavid thing many times before. It's sending Hyman down, and I don't know. I mean, I'll be curious to get your guys' thoughts on this, especially Julian, having watched him in Toronto for the last little while. I thought Hyman was okay in the preseason. I didn't think he lit the world on fire. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with that. I don't know if I may be being a little bit harsh and grading him. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that Hyman needs a guy who he can get the puck to, and I don't think Nugent Hopkins is that talent. Like, he's a talented, great player, but he's a secondary piece. He's not a trigger man. He's not a shoot first guy. Nugent Hopkins is the playmaker and the secondary guy on a line, not an all-star on the line. So Hyman needs to feed the puck to someone who's going to put the puck in the net and wants the puck on their stick. So that's why I don't care whether it was going to be McDavid or Draisaitl. He's got to be on one of their lines because he needs someone to get the puck to when he's off the boards, looking in front of the net, right? So that's the whole thing with me. I don't know if he can. You're not going to get the best out of Hyman when he has to be that guy to go to the net, score the goals, or if he doesn't have a guy who's going to put the puck in the net for him, right? So I think you lose the effectiveness, and then that might, snowball into people saying, why do we pay this guy so much money? It's a bad contract. And then you're down another rabbit hole over there. So I don't understand it. I think I would like to just, see the way they've been, we've had it all penciled in all season long, roll that out first. And then if that doesn't work and you want to try some different things, by all means, but I would give the opportunity to have the players play where they should be playing before they start flipping everything upside down.
Yeah, for me, it's Zach Hyman's job to lose. Like, that's how I see it, right? He comes in, he's got the big contract, and they want everything that he brings you on paper, but they also want the points he hasn't produced, right? Like, he's not really ever been more than a mid 40 point guy. They need him to be a 50-point guy. Like, that's what they're paying for. That's where the big money comes in. And if you take away Draisaitl and McDavid from that, you really limit his ability to do that. And then you're like, okay, well, now you're already sort of plucking away from him before he even starts. So I would say at least have one of Draisaitl or McDavid with him until he proves, if he proves, and knock on wood that doesn't happen, that he isn't going to give you the offense no matter who you put him with, right? Mm-hmm. Then you make things different. I'm also a little worried about Puljujarvi, right? Like, he's figured it out and he's doing really well. And with McDavid, maybe he'll be good no matter who else that third is. Yeah, Draisaitl with those two is going to be great, but you have the pairs, right? So we'll see. I mean, again, we're maybe too early with this. We have no idea what these lines are actually going to look like. We've only just seen what people are freaking out about in practice and what Tippett's talking about. I don't know.
We're supposed to be the voice of reason here, aren't we?
I guess.
We're just adding fuel to the fire at this point.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about something that's not quite as, I guess I don't want to say important. It's important, but not such an exclamation point on what could happen here with the production. But let's talk about some of the roster moves that were made here just recently. There's some waiver wires that happened. Kyle Turris went on waivers. Excuse me, who's the other name I'm looking for here? William Lagesson went on waivers, both cleared. And then, of course, Brian, we can talk about Stuart Skinner going down and being assigned to the AHL. He's in Bakersfield. He played good in the game I saw him play. Turris is going to stay with the roster. I don't know if Lagesson's going to get a lot of opportunities here with this blue line, but he was all right. He didn't see much preseason action. Julian, I'll start with you. What do you think about the waivers, the fact that both guys cleared? You've been a good big guy in Turris's quarter in the past, and I'm assuming you still are. Now, what do you think about the fact that he was waived, cleared, and probably going to be sticking with the roster here?
Yeah. I like Turris. I think he's bounced back really well in the preseason from what he showed last year. I think he had 6 points in 4 games or something like that, or 4 points in 6 games, somewhere around there. So he was already almost what he did in 27 games in the regular season a year ago. So I know it's a limited sample size. He's probably getting a little bit of higher minutes and stuff.
And it helps that Perlini was on fire, right?
Yeah, exactly. But to see that confidence and that ability to, to get maybe back to that mindset of, okay, I can do this rather than, on a downhill spiral. That was good to see. And I think that, their depth is better with him in the lineup, the way I see it. I think it gives them a little bit more versatility, a little bit more of, you can interchange people more. And that bottom 6, I'm liking what I'm seeing from them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Turris is one that, he'll be back in the lineup shortly. Lagesson, I think he's just behind the 8 ball. There's too many guys ahead of him. Chris Russell's probably going to be the 7th guy, I would assume. He probably won't get much unless there's some injuries that happen. He's a good fallback option for sure. But I think it'll take a couple injuries for him to get back up to where he was prior. And Skinner showed really well in the preseason again. The goaltending has been really, really, really good. And that's surprisingly so. We thought that was one of the biggest question marks. Well, I for sure I did. I don't know if everybody else was on the same boat.
I'm pretty sure most people would say
that. But they've been good, and Koskinen's answered the bell, and Skinner's been really well too. So he's the 3rd goalie now. He's the next guy up if something happens to Smith or Koskinen, and I'm confident that he can, show what he's shown at the regular season.
Yeah, he definitely looked good enough. And Brian will talk about this, I'm sure.
Future President Trophy winner.
Yeah, he gives you the confidence to know that if something were to happen, right? Like if the 2 guys that you have, Smith and Koskinen, don't play well, or one gets injured, you can bring in Skinner, and you're not too worried about having to find a backup. So I think that's good. William Lagesson, I don't know. I mean, this blue line is kind of sneaky deep. You know what I mean? Like, it isn't deep, but it's sort of sneaky deep. When you got Slater Cuckoo and you got Chris Russell and you got some of those guys, as options as your 6-7. I don't know where Lagesson fits in all of that, right? Yes, maybe some people thought with Caleb Jones going and Ethan Bear being moved on that he would have more of an opportunity, but I just don't see it. Like, I don't know where he's going to fit there. And Kyle Turris, I think he'll play. I don't know how often, and he'll be comfortable being whatever, but I think he was on waivers basically because of his salary, like 1.5 million, right?
No
if it happens to get claimed, you get 1.5 million in cap space, right? He didn't, so they don't. But it would have been interesting if Archibald, Clefbaum, Turris all comes off that cap, right? Gives Holland a little room to maneuver there. Brian, what do you think about what you saw from Skinner?
Well, actually, I just want to jump in on Lagesson real quick. I was surprised that he wasn't picked up by somebody, to be honest.
Really?
And I don't know if that maybe speaks to just how far his stock has fallen. Because imagine if we were having this conversation on opening night or before opening night last year and saying that Lagesson's going on waivers, we would have probably been for sure figured he would be picked up. And I find that interesting. And to Julian's point, he's just fallen further down the depth chart on this team now. Russell is going to be the 7th guy. I think maybe even Broberg has moved up ahead of him. I thought Lagesson was okay in the preseason, but he certainly didn't do anything to take anybody else's job away from them. So that's interesting to me, though. I mean, he's still fairly young. I mean, he's 24, 25. Yep. There could be something there. So the Oilers might have gotten a lucky break here with him passing through waivers, because that surprised me. But getting on to the future all-time leading win and shutout in NHL history, goaltender. No, I thought he played really well. The goaltenders all were great. I think Koskinen, he opened up a little bit and sort of delved into what it was like being away from his family last year and having them here with him this year, and how that's made a big difference personally for him. I think we tend to forget that sometimes, that, these guys are getting paid a ton of money and et cetera, but these things affect them all, like everybody. And he just seems to be at a much better place. I thought he looked really good in the preseason. Smith doesn't seem to have lost a step. And I think Skinner proved, everyone should feel confident that if you need him to go in and start an NHL game tomorrow, he can, and he'll probably get you the win too. So the depth is good. I don't remember a time the Oilers have had. It's funny because we look at the top 2 goalies on this team and there's a lot of questions around those. But if you look at the goaltender depth in this organization, it's as good as it's been since whenever. So
it's really unproven, but it's pretty good. Like Konovalov.
The upside's there.
Yeah, for sure.
Even with Rodriguez in the ECHL, I mean, I think there's some real promise with him there too. So.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this all pans out. We've heard a lot of things. I think it was Kyle Woodleaf, the In Goal magazine, was talking about how he thinks Smith is going to be as good as last year, and he thinks Koskinen's going to be better. So if that's true, because the Oilers had the 7th best save percentage in the league last year, nobody ever talks about it, right? So it should be very, very interesting to see where that goes. All right, let's switch things to close things off, but it's going to take us a minute to go through this. Let's do some projections for the year. We'll keep it very general. We'll go forwards, defensemen, and we talked a little bit about the goalies, so maybe we won't have to go too deep into that one. Julian, I'll start with you. If you could pick, let's say, 2 things, projection-wise, focus on a player, focus on just overall production from the forwards, whatever you want to do, go any direction that you want to go. If you had to make 2 bold predictions or projections for this year's forwards group, what would it be?
Ooh, that's tough on the spot. I think Hyman will get that opportunity on the top line eventually, or at least with one of Draisaitl or McDavid. So I'll say he's able to crack the 50-point mark. I think that's definitely within his range and his ability to do that. If he's going to get some time with one of those 2 guys. And then I think for me, I'll go with the other wing and say Puljujarvi on a 30 goals this season.
I was thinking about him. I was thinking about 30 too, but I was going to be a little less, what's the thing? Glasses half full.
Yeah.
I was going to say 25, but I like that. I don't
goals,
mind.
I'll be a little bolder and say 30. So it's a little bit tougher.
I'm on board for yes, he's scoring 30. Yep.
Yeah, it certainly could happen. I mean, the way he's looked in preseason, and again, just preseason, but man, he's looked good. He might be, outside of McDavid and Draisaitl, who are always good, he might have been the best Oiler on the ice for a lot of those games.
I think so. This is going to sound crazy. I think we almost have we could have a Curry Gretzky dynamic going on here with him and McDavid as they both continue to evolve. I realize I'm comparing him to a Hall of Famer, one of the all-time great goal scorers, but I've been that impressed with him over the last what we saw in preseason, just how we saw him evolve last year. And I know you're a big fan too, Jim, because you're saying he's the best player out that draft, potentially.
Well, potentially. Let's make sure that we put potentially in quotation marks, because there's Matthew Tkachuk and Dubois, and there's a lot of good people out of that draft. But I just saw, when I wrote that article, I just saw a lot of the guys taking downturns, right? Like Tkachuk was going down a little bit. Dubois was having a rough year. Line wasn't doing so well. And, you've got Puljujärvi, who's just starting to figure it out, right? So, yeah, I'm with you. And there were lots of talk when that guy was drafted that you talk about the Gretzky Curry. I mean, people talked about it when they picked him 4th overall, right? They figured, the Finnish guy, he's going to be the next Curry, right? Like those comparisons were made. It was a given for sure. For me, Brian, did I ask you what your projections were?
Well, that was pretty much actually mine too. So I'm coming up with another one right now. So I'll let you go ahead and I'll have something that I was clever to say here, maybe.
Okay. I'm going to make one very obvious, not so bold prediction, although it might be a little high. And then I'm going to make another one that's really kind of out there. One, McDavid, I think gets 150 points. I just got the feeling that the way he's played and the way things are going with a full 82 games, if that's what happens here, I just don't know how when you have 56 games and you get 100 plus, how do you not get 150 and 82?
Do you imagine? I would love to see that happen.
Yeah, it'll be pretty crazy if it does. And the other one, I think Yamamoto is going to get he's going to be creeping on 20 goals. There was something about the way he played last year where it didn't go in for him. He didn't shoot enough. He's been working on his shot a ton this offseason. I think he knows he has to shoot. I think he understands that that's his job now, is not just to be a little menace on the ice and hit and forecheck and do. He's got to shoot. And if he's on that second line and he stays there for a little while, I think he gets 20. And
what did you think about him in the preseason?
He didn't do much. I mean, he scored, I think, one goal, something like that. But I thought he was decent. He was quiet, not quiet as in not very effective, but he was quiet as in he didn't really notice him too much. I mean, and then again, we were all focused on other things. Everybody was watching Doug Keith. Everybody was watching Puljujärvi. Everybody was watching all the other storylines that went with it, right?
Yeah.
But I thought he was okay.
Was he playing shorthanded before last? They had other guys more or less to play shorthanded, and he was on that he scored that shorthanded goal. So I don't know. Yeah, I think he has good speed. I still need to see it from him though. That's my only thing. I need to see something. I'm waiting to see. I'm kind of getting a little bit more on board with Puljujärvi, but Yamamoto's the one. But he's a wild card. If he can take a step, that's a big boost on that second line.
Well, he has to, right?
Yep.
He's the contract year, signed a 1-year deal, not a very high one.
Go out and do it now.
Yeah, this is it. It's either he's going to crumble under the pressure, or he's going to really excel under the pressure. Yep. So it'll be interesting to see. Okay. Brian, I'll start with you. Oh, you had to finish your other projection for your.
Okay, I got one. There's going to be at least 6 20-goal scorers on this team.
Ooh, I like that.
Okay, who are the? Okay, obvious. McDavid, Draisaitl, Puljujärvi, because you had projected him at 30.
Mm-hmm. Nugent Hopkins.
Hyman, just and then I think power play points alone.
Yeah, and then I think you can look at there's literally 4 or 5 other guys on this team.
Okay, Brendan Perlini.
Perlini could. I think Fogle could. I think Darnell Nurse, this may sound crazy. Darnell Nurse, he had 16 in 56 games last year. That's well over a 20-goal pace.
And he's not even playing power play.
I was just going to say, if he plays more power play time, which he did in the preseason.
Yamamoto
then again,
was
he
on
didn't
pace.
have certain guys, right? But
yeah. And Yamamoto, you just said yourself, Jim, you think he could get creep to 20? He was on pace for 20. I think he was on pace for 30 at the rate he scored in that brief stint there 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So these are all guys that, could step up and score.
Well, don't forget Tyson Barrie.
Yes.
If he's playing first minute power play and he's shooting, I could see him doing it, especially if they're calling cross checks and they do all that. And if the Oilers get 5-6 power plays a game, which would be crazy, but you could see it. That's the way that it was trending in the preseason. He's going to shoot like crazy. Right.
So you look at that's just a reflection of the depth this team has. And that's pretty amazing to think. I'd have to look it up, but I'm betting we're looking at maybe early 90s since there's been that many 20-goal scorers on this team. So that's what I'm going with, at least 6.
Yep, I like that.
All right, Julian, let's switch to the blue line. If you had to make a couple projections for the blue line this season, what do you see? I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but what do you see happening?
I mean, that's tough. I think I could see I could see Bouchard. I'll say Ivan Bouchard takes over power play 1, because I think the way he moved in preseason, he was walking that blue line, getting shots to the net, and that slap shot is something else. So I think he can be pretty lethal. And all it takes is one injury for Barrie to just, give him a little bit of an opportunity and crack that door open enough just for him to put his foot in. And if he can do what he did and look the way he did in the preseason, that could be pretty lethal, and he might just steal that spot away.
I took him in my fantasy draft today.
See, you already know.
I got him late because nobody's thinking what we're thinking about Evan Bouchard. Right? Yeah, Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit iffy on the defense. I'm nervous about that second pairing. I don't know. I don't want to be piling on Cody Ceci, but I need to see a little bit more here for that pairing to be the shutdown second pair that the others need them to be. I agree with what you guys say about Barrie. A bold prediction. I think we see Broberg get some games before all is said and done this year. And I think if he gets that opportunity, he's gonna take the ball and run with it.
I'm with you on Broberg if there's an injury. I think
if he gets the opportunity, yeah.
That has
something has to happen to create that. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think, and I know their numbers were terrible. Everybody's talking about their core season stuff. The CC Keith line was caved in a lot, especially in that one game where they were the top pair. I still think Keith's is going to be a sneaky, decent addition for this team.
He will be.
Yeah, I think people will settle down. Like I don't think he's ever going to not be polarizing. Like Chris Russell was never not polarizing in Edmonton. But I get the sense that Keith is going to settle some people in. I saw some good stuff from him. Yes, he had a couple of nice assists, and yes, he was getting a lot of shots against him. But that was a game where there was no McDavid, no Draisaitl. They were the top pair. Vancouver had their full roster in almost. Like they were bound to get outshot. So it was just going to happen. I don't know about CC. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
And I do predict that Darnell Nurse is going to play more power play time. Whether they run 2 defensemen on that unit or not, or in the second power play.
I would totally do that.
Yeah.
I would
he
love
plays
to see
a ton
that.
already, but he's the kind of guy who just wants to play all the time. Right? Like he wants to play half a game or he's like not in it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's good, but the more he plays, the better he is.
Oh, you saw in the playoffs, right?
If you're going to pop
running him out there.
Yeah, put him on that left side and give him some power play opportunities. He's skilled enough. He can certainly do it. So it would be nice to see him keep up, if he can keep up his 5-on-5 production, but also get that power play production. That should be very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. Julian, do you have any thoughts? We talked about it a little bit. Any thoughts on the goaltending at all?
I liked where they're at. I like what I saw in preseason. I just the health that I'm a little bit concerned about of Mike Smith. But I mean, other than that, I think their defense is a little bit better than it was last year overall. I think that could help them out. And I think that, just the depth is going to help out. The more defensive minded forwards they have at center, that's going to take a big load off of the guys that can move up the puck up the ice better and break out easier. So I think they'll be okay. I'm not too worried about the goaltending at all.
What about you, Brian?
I think we're going to see them, Koskinen and Smith, play more of a 50 or closer to a 50-50 split than I had originally thought anyway. If you listen to what Tippett has said, it seems to be suggesting that Koskinen has certainly seemed like, with the way he's played in the preseason look so far, like you could rely on him to give you 30 to 40 games this season. I think we might see more of like the actual 1A, 1B as we did in the 2019-2020 season, as opposed to like Smith starting 5 or 6 of every 6 or 7 games like it was last year. Mm-hmm. Which I think will be good for the team in the regular season. And the playoffs are a whole different animal themselves. But I think we're probably looking at closer to like I was thinking we might see Smith play close to 60 games, but that's obviously that's not going to happen. I think it's close.
I think it's too much too.
Yeah.
And if he's playing that much, there's a problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, here's my prediction, and you guys let me know what you think here. I have a feeling that Mikko Koskinen is going to play well enough that come the NHL trade deadline, we're going to be talking about whether or not to add another goalie. And then come the offseason, that we're going to be talking about whether or not to re-sign Mikko Koskinen. Now, I don't think that they will. I think that Holland will go out and he'll try to land somebody else and get a bigger fish, somebody who's going to be your starter for the next few years. But I think he plays well enough that he's in that conversation about whether or not it's really a good idea just to ignore that he doesn't come back here. You know what I mean? Like where they go, man, Koskinen was not good last season, but he's been good enough this season. Is he a starter? Could he be the guy that we could move forward with? I think that conversation is going to happen. And I think it's going to drive people crazy.
I'm with you on that.
I can't even imagine what the reaction and how polarizing it will be if we hit to the trade deadline. The Oilers are maybe in a playoff spot and they're not talking about adding another goaltender, because that's the thing everybody's looking at, right? They're going, okay, well, what can we add at the trade deadline and make sure we have a playoff? It'll be the goalie. It'll be the guy who shakes loose from a team that doesn't make the playoffs, who now is willing to move a goalie that we couldn't get our hands on before. And then they don't maybe do it because Koskinen's playing just well enough that you're like, we don't need him, right? That's my prediction for the year. I don't know what his numbers are going to look like. I don't know if he's going to let in those weak glove first goals, but I think he plays well enough that the conversation is had that he is maybe the guy you go with, and that'll be interesting. Brian, what do you think about that?
Do you think that hinges on how well Koskinen plays or how well Smith plays? Like, because if you have a guy who's playing, if let's say Smith is playing at the level he was playing at last year, they're thinking they can head into the playoffs and ride him, hopefully for as many rounds as they can. If Smith's just playing kind of good and Koskinen is playing kind of good, I think what I'm trying to say is you want to have a goalie playing at an elite level. I would rather head into the playoffs with one goalie playing at an elite level than two that might be good on a given night.
Well, here's what I'll say about that, and maybe this is where you're going. I think if Mike Smith plays out of this world, I still don't know that the Oilers are comfortable because he's 39, he's injury prone, and if that were to happen in the playoffs, they're screwed, right? So I think even if he's playing fantastic, they're still going to look at another backup for Mike Smith because Mikko Koskinen didn't play enough to prove that he could be that backup. If Mikko Koskinen plays really well and he gets a lot more games than we think, I think the Oilers will be confident enough to roll with him and have Smith as your 1B or 1A or 50-50 split in the playoffs. That's how I see that going. I don't know if that'll happen. I don't know if either one's going to play like that, but I just don't know that you want to rely on Smith. He's fantastic when he's on, but he's older and he's injury prone. So if that were to happen, then what? Right?
They'll have to add a third goalie. They'll have to add a third goalie before the deadline. Everybody's doing it, especially if they're headed to the playoffs and they know it. They have to add a third goalie just for the depth because we've seen it too many times already happen to teams where they're good, but one injury and it derails their whole season. So
you guys know the Oilers already have their third goalie. Come on.
Well, maybe they do, right? But again, that'll be the one question mark. It's just the games, the deviation of game, like who gets what, how often are they playing, how do they play when they are playing? Is one guy take it from the other, right? Like, are we thinking 60-40 and it winds up being 70-30? Like, that'll really tell the story for the season, and it'll be very interesting headed towards the trade deadline. All right, guys. Well, I'm excited. One more thing before we go, Brian, I'll start with you, putting you on the spot. One prediction for tomorrow night's game. So Vancouver, as people watch this, it'll be today. But the game against Vancouver, what's your prediction for what we see here in that game?
6-3 Oilers, either McDavid or Draisaitl has a hat trick.
Ooh, hat trick off the hop. All right, Julian, what about you?
That's actually, I was going to go with the hat trick, but I'll say 5-2, and I'm going to say Puljujarvi with 2 goals.
Oh,
yeah, that's a good one.
Yo, I was going to say, because there was twice, I think, this season where they were trying to get him the hat trick in the preseason. Yeah. And it didn't quite happen. But I do wonder if he'll get a couple. I think Hyman's going to get one early. I like that idea. I'm assuming the Oilers going to win this game, but Vancouver could be an interesting team to watch, right? Like,
I think they're the threat to, I think everyone's kind of figuring Vegas Oilers for 1-2 in the division, and then it's wide open after that. I think Vancouver is got as good a chance.
Yeah, they're as good to take over the second spot, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4-1 though. That's going to be my, I don't think anybody gets the hat trick, but I think one gets 2 and they're trying for the third. And I do think that the goalies play well enough and the defense plays smart, and there's only 1 goal for Vancouver. So we'll see if we're anywhere close.
We're at least all in agreement that it's a 3-goal spread.
It's a win.
Yeah,
okay,
that's all that matters, right?
As
long as it's a win.
Get your betting lines up.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Next week we'll have some stuff to talk about because there'll be a couple games in the books, so we'll see where it goes.
We're back.
For everybody else, we appreciate you tuning in. This has been another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. For Jim Parsons, Brian Swane, Julian Mongillo, and Colton, who was not with us tonight, but will be back with us next week. Have a good one. Enjoy the game tomorrow or tonight as you watch this. Put in the comment section, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel. Check out the other content too. And we'll talk to you next week.